Welcome into the Commanders Report. I am your host, Jack Sperry. On today's show, I'm going to be breaking down some Alex Smith drama. That's right, the former Washington quarterback had some very interesting comments over the last couple of days. I'm going to be breaking that down here in just a second. And then also, should the Washington Commanders replace guard Andrew Norwell? Going to be going over a couple of those options here in just a second. But first, make sure you click that subscribe button so that we can win this week's sub battle in the NFC East with the other teams here at Chat Sports. Giants now is at 86 and Eagles now is at 79, but we are right on their tail at 46 right now, guys. We need to beat them this week. We need to assert our dominance over the NFC East. So do me a favor, click that subscribe button if you want more Commanders content here on YouTube, 100% free, and turn on your notifications so you always know when we put out our free videos. So now let's talk a little bit about Alex Smith, former Washington quarterback who claims that defensive head coaches are bad for developing young quarterbacks. And it just so happens that the Commanders have a defensive head coach in Rivera trying to develop a young quarterback in Sam Howell. This is what the former Washington quarterback had to say. There's a different mentality you have, especially as a young quarterback versus a defensive head coach. When you really the coach's mentality is, hey, don't screw up, don't turn the ball over, don't put us in a bad situation. That's a huge difference in a mentality and a mindset for a young quarterback, especially if it's a bit of a rocky start. As much as you think you're prepared to handle that development of a young kid, you're just not. So is Sam Howell in trouble here? Is having a defensive head coach in Ron Rivera bad for his development? I mean, personally, I definitely think Sam has a little bit of a ways to go here in his sophomore season. He's going to have that nice mentor to really get him to where he needs to go in his NFL career. I think he's got some good athleticism. I think he's got some good arm strength, but is having a defensive head coach hindering his ability to get things done at the quarterback position? In my opinion, I don't think so. I think that he can still have success with Ron Rivera as his head coach. Personally, I think that there are a couple of reasons for that. I'll get to those in just a second here. And, you know, with Ron Rivera coming in, it's really important that Sam Howell has a good season this year, because if he doesn't, he's going to be out the door. New ownership coming in. It's going to be tough for Ron Rivera to keep his job if Sam Howell doesn't perform this year, because if Sam Howell doesn't perform this year, the Commanders are likely not making the playoffs. And if they don't make the playoffs, then Ron Rivera is likely gone. So I think that there's two things that can be true here. One, you can have Alex can be right here that defensive head coaches are worse than offensive head coaches at developing young quarterbacks. We've seen that over the last decade in the NFL. Usually it's the offensive guys that can get these guys to where they want to go in their careers, and Ron Rivera just isn't an offensive-minded guy. But it's also true that Sam Howell can still have success this season. I'm going to be breaking down a couple of reasons why here in just a second, but let me know in the comments section, do you agree or disagree with Alex Smith's take that it's bad for young quarterbacks to have defensive head coaches? Type A if you agree, or type D if you disagree. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So whenever you get a chance here, whenever YouTube throws an ad break your way, take advantage of that time by answering today's question with an A or a D. All right, so let's talk a little bit about why I think Sam Howell can still have some success this year. First is that he has a new offensive coordinator that could be a potentially great fit here for him and with this Commanders offense, and Eric Bieniemy. Now, we've talked about Eric Bieniemy quite a bit on the show here. He spent the last 5 years as the offensive coordinator with the Kansas City Chiefs, and over that time, they had arguably maybe not even arguably. I mean, they just had the best offense in the National Football League. 5 straight AFC championships and 2 Super Bowl titles. But some people think that that's mostly Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and not because of Bieniemy. Bieniemy came to Washington to prove that he can do some really great things and prove that he can be an NFL head coach somewhere. And I think that if Bieniemy ends up being really good, I think with the things we've seen from other quarterbacks like Tua Tagovailoa over the last couple of years, you take a look at Tua. You know, he's not the most physically gifted guy. Let's say he's small in stature, doesn't have a great arm, but with the right play caller and with the right supporting cast, Tua had a fantastic 2022 campaign where that Dolphins offense was one of the best in football last year when he was on the field. 65% completion percentage, over 3,500 yards, 25-8. Touchdown to interception ratio. He was fantastic. And I think if Tua's on the field this year, the Dolphins are going to be one of the best teams in the NFL, period. And, Sam Howell, maybe he's not a Patrick Mahomes. Maybe he's not an Aaron Rodgers. But you have some really nice weapons here in Washington. And I think Eric Bieniemy could get the most out of him. And then also the potentially great supporting cast here with Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, right? Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson. Sam Howell's got some nice weapons to work with here in the nation's capital. And although the offensive line is a little shaky right now, if you combine the good offensive play calling from Eric Bieniemy with the good weapons here, like you see, Terry McLaurin, one of the most underrated receivers in the National Football League. Curtis Samuel is another guy that's really underrated in the slot. Jahan Dotson, I think, is absolutely fantastic as well as your number 2 guy. Sam Howell's got the foundation here to really have a good season along with an elite defense. I didn't even mention that. This defense could be a top 5 defense next year. And personally, I just don't think that Sam is going to have to carry this team in order for the Commanders to win football games. Now, you can check out my complete roster breakdown and see what Sam Howell has to work with. We broke this down earlier this week. I'm going to put the link to this video in the comments and description of today's show. So when it comes to Sam Howell, I don't think that, having a defensive head coach is any excuse for him not to have at least a decent season and get this team into playoff contention, right? I think that he's got the arm strength. I think he has some nice mobility. I think he has the control of the locker room. I think that he's seen as the leader in that group. And I think with the good offensive play calling that you expect from Eric Bieniemy, along with the elite defense that he's going to have, hopefully you have a good run game so you don't have to carry this team. I think Sam Howell, along with his supporting cast and Eric Bieniemy, could have a pretty successful 2023 season. So if you want an Emmanuel Forbes Commanders jersey officially licensed here, you can go ahead and find one on the Chat Sports website. You can go chatsports.com/Emmanuel Forbes. He's going to be wearing Forbes Jr. on the back of his jersey this year, along with the number 13. So if you want to get that officially licensed Commanders jersey for the first round pick this year, go ahead and go to chatsports.com/Emmanuel Forbes right now. Now let's shift to some free agency rumors, where there's a rumor that the Commanders could be parting ways with Andrew Norwell, last year's starter on the offensive line on the interior. Didn't have his best season. In fact, he's coming off a career worst season last year with a 59.8 PFF grade, which was 47th in the NFL among interior offensive linemen. He allowed 4 sacks and 29 pressures. Not ideal whatsoever, and really it was his worst season of his career, and he's not getting any younger. Some people think that Norwell is starting to run out of gas, and some people think, you could add some cap space by cutting him and go after somebody else on the interior of the offensive line. You could save $4.38 million in cap space for 2023 if you cut him post June 1st, and with that money, you could definitely make a splash here if you're the Commanders and really solidify that offensive line. Right now, they just have about $2.4 million in cap space for the 2023 season. Adding that 4.38 could definitely give you enough to go out and make a little bit of a splash. Now, there's not too many offensive guards still available in NFL free agency, but there's a couple of guys to keep your eye on here. I definitely think that there's some names to consider if you are the Washington Commanders, because Norwell's not getting any younger, and he just didn't play all that well last year. You hope he can have a bounce back season this year, but you could potentially go after a guy like Dalton Risner. Gave up 3 sacks last year with the Denver Broncos. Didn't have his best season, but overall he's a pretty darn solid pass protector. As a run blocker, that's a different story, and because of the Commanders trying to shift to more of a run-heavy scheme, I think they really want to focus on Brian Robinson, Chris Rodriguez Jr., Antonio Gibson, getting that run game going with that, what I expect to be an excellent defense in 2023. So maybe Risner's not the best fit, but maybe somebody else like a Justin Pugh, somebody that's had a lot of success in this league. He's getting a bit older. He had a really serious knee injury he's coming off of. So, that one's definitely a risk if you are the Commanders. But, with Andrew Norwell, he's definitely question mark going into 2023. It's certainly worth at least thinking about the possibility of maybe replacing him. So let me know who you would take here among these 3 players players in the comment section. If you would take Norwell, type AN. If you would go with Dalton Risner, go with DR. Or if you would go with Justin Pugh, go with JP. Personally, I'm going to stick with Andrew Norwell. I've been hearing some of these rumors that they might go out and get somebody else. I'm not buying it for 1 second. I think they're going to roll with Norwell. Hope he has a bounce-back season next year for the Washington Commanders. So that's going to be it for today's show, guys. I appreciate all the real ones, all the real comrades that made it to the end of today's video. I will see you guys later, and as always, hail to the Commanders.